Okay, my sides are visible now, I think, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Good
sure.
to go, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, let us, okay. Since last 1.5 years, we have been witnessing a very dramatic emergence of this COVID pandemic. In fact, we have all been overwhelmed with this pandemic, and our lives have changed in the last 1.5 years. Still, and it continues to relentlessly continue to ravage us and worry us, and we are very much, in fact, affected by this virus. Our lifestyle has totally changed since this pandemic made its appearance. First case, and still, if you remember, there is still no antiviral drug, no drug which has been developed which can save lives in COVID. Vaccines have been developed in a record time. That is a credit to our scientific community. First cases were reported somewhere in November and December from China. And in India, the first cases were reported in 3 students who returned back from Wuhan, who tested positive in February. And when the cases started rising, the WHO declared it as a pandemic in March 12th. And then as the cases started rising in the country, a national lockdown was declared by the government of India on 25th of March, which continued for till 31st of May. As the unlocking took place, subsequently, we saw a first wave, which peaked somewhere in 16th of September, where more than 1 lakh cases were reported in India. Then it subsided somewhere in October and November. The second wave started in March, and then which peaked in May 6th, where more than 4 lakh cases were reported. So this is the national lockdown. All of us has seen for the first time. Nobody probably had heard of what a national lockdown is, and it was totally unprecedented. What was done during this lockdown, that though the cases were not many, but this time during lockdown was utilized by the government to prepare ourselves for the impending COVID pandemic. Number of COVID care health centers were prepared. Number of COVID health centers were prepared. Dedicated hospitals were built. ICUs were set up. Equipment and ventilators were purchased. Manpower was increased. Protocols were developed so that we got prepared to face the first pandemic. At the start of this pandemic, about 1.5 years ago, there was only one RT-PCR lab, that was in the National Institute of Virology in Pune. Subsequently, number of RT-PCR labs were started, and in a record manner. In Nagpur itself, there were so many RT-PCR labs were started and they were accredited. These efforts were largely appreciated by WHO because it resulted in a well-controlled infection rate in the first wave. So we saw only about 1 lakh cases per day in the first wave. And then after this national lockdown, subsequent lockdowns were left to the state governments, as the state is a health subject. But this lockdown had tremendous impact. Lockdowns are not cheap, they're very expensive. They affect the economy. There was a lot of impact on the chronic diseases. Diabetes, hypertension, heart attacks remained undetected, untreated, uncontrolled. People did not go to the hospitals. There were a lot of psychological problems. People developed depression, and psychosocial stress increased. Schools were closed since then, and this impacted the education tremendously. And since then, it has been found that we are now shifting gears progressively while watching the road ahead. and then opening up, closing, depending on number of factors like the test positivity rate, the availability of oxygen beds, and the availability of oxygen, medical oxygen. What this test positivity rate means is that the number of RT-PCR tests, which is the gold standard for the diagnosis of COVID, of 100 tests done, how many turn out to be positive? And if the test positivity rate is less than 5%, that means we have a quite good handle over the pandemic. During the peak of the first wave, the test positivity was nearly 30%, 40%. And then availability of oxygens and oxygen beds was very important during the preparations. Now, this slide actually tells you that in the first wave, there were about 1 lakh cases, and in the second wave, there was very brutal and very ferocious. It affected about more than 4 lakh cases per day. Now, as we controlled the first wave at the end, and as the new year approached, there was a sense of euphoria. As the new year heralded, we thought that the worst is over. We thought that the pandemic is over, and vaccination had started from 16th of January, which was prioritized to healthcare workers. And general impression on the public was that the COVID is gone, the pandemic is over. And this led to a lot of carelessness amongst the people. There was no what COVID appropriate behavior. What is meant by that is people stopped wearing masks, social distancing was not being done, gatherings were done. There were a lot of election rallies being held, religious gatherings were there. All this led to the second wave, which was very ferocious. And this second wave, India was struck very hard. It was very brutal, devastating, and ferocious, and has a great impact. It was 4 to 5 times more severe than the first wave. And daily cases were more than 4 lakhs, especially in the month of May. And there were more than 4,000 deaths per day. And this second wave was essentially driven by a mutant strain, which was called the Delta virus. This Delta virus was highly infectious, and earlier only 1 or 2 people in the first wave, if one person in the family was affected, only 1 or 2 people in the family got infected. However, in the second wave, we found that it affected the whole family. Similarly, in the first wave, we found people who were living in the urban slums, especially those in Satranjipura and Mominpura area, were living in crowded places, were affected more, whereas the rural people were not affected in the first wave. What we found in the second wave, that those people who were not affected in the first wave got affected in the second wave more rapidly. So more people in the rural areas got affected. In the first wave, we found that young people were not affected. In the second wave, this population of people in the 20s and 30s were also affected in this second wave. And it was essentially driven by this mutant viral Delta virus. Now, there was a lot of challenges during the second wave. There was unimaginable levels of collective misery and agony. And we were totally unprepared and unwary of what this second wave, which had catastrophic effects, since it was totally unexpected. This was essentially because we had prematurely celebrated that COVID is over. And since people thought that vaccines have been developed in a very unprecedented record time, that now COVID is over. Complacency developed, and that because of lack of COVID appropriate behavior, the second wave made its impact. Now, if you look at these waves here, the first wave started somewhere in the March. In 16th of September, it peaked with about 1 lakh cases per day on 16th. Subsequently, it subsided. And then the second wave started from March, and it peaked somewhere around 6th of May, where more than 4 lakh cases. So second wave was about 4 to 5 times more severe than the first wave. Now, if you look at other countries, also United States, they also have suffered from similar first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave. So there were multiple waves which this disease is known to come in waves. Before the second wave set in, only 50% of the urban pocket people were having were positive for antibodies, which were protective, and only 20% in the rural population had antibodies. And therefore, the large population was susceptible to COVID before the second wave. But we have to understand that the second wave is still not over. And we are now talking about the third wave. And in the months of September, October, the coming months are very crucial because there are several festivals which have been planned. There were a lot of challenges we faced in the second wave. And unless and until we recollect what challenges we faced in the second wave, we cannot prepare for the third wave. We need to overcome the challenges and the mistakes which we made in the second wave. In the second wave, since the number of cases were so large, it caused unprecedented strain on the healthcare system. The healthcare workers were overburdened, and there was a shortage of healthcare workers. There was shortage of medical oxygen, shortage of beds, oxygen beds, shortage of drugs like remdesivir, tocilizumab, and there were shortages of even ambulances. In addition, people who had mild symptoms, there was misuse of drugs. Like steroids were used, which have to be used only in patients who become hypoxic. That means their SpO2 levels, that means their oxygen levels are low. People started using steroids in even mild cases. Steroids should ideally be reserved for patients with moderate to severe disease. But there was a misuse of steroids. People started advocating use of chest CT scans left and right, even in mild cases. This was totally uncalled for, unnecessary. Similarly, a long list of lab tests which were not recommended were being done in all patients. So a lot of mistakes were done in the first wave while managing patients of COVID. Favipiravir, a drug all of you may remember, what became the most selling drug in India in April 2021. Now, favipiravir is a drug which the evidence that it works in COVID is very weak. It has not been recommended by the national ICMR guidelines, and since it was recommended by the Maharashtra State Task Force. It was used in all patients, but it did not work. And unnecessary use of favipiravir, it became the most selling drug in India. There was black marketing of remdesivir, again an antiviral drug, which has not shown to save lives in COVID. People started using remdesivir in home settings, even before, because in mild cases. This was not what was there in the guidelines. Remdesivir should ideally be given in patients who are hospitalized and who are hypoxic, whose oxygen levels are low. And there was a marked shortage of remdesivir. There was black marketing of remdesivir. And again, remdesivir is a drug which has not been shown in any of the clinical trials to improve survival or to save lives. Only one study showed that it shortens the recovery time. But still, and WHO has in fact said that it should not be used in COVID in November 2020. So there was a lot of problems which we did, and there was a marked shortage. And we had reports of patients who were dying due to non-availability of oxygen, non-availability of oxygen beds, and even non-availability of ambulances, non-availability of medicines. These were the challenges which were faced in the second wave. This was followed by a very unprecedented mucormycosis epidemic. This was attributed to misuse of or abuse of steroids in the mild cases, which caused increase in blood sugar levels, which predisposes a patient for this fungal infection called mucormycosis. And when these cases of mucormycosis increased after in the last month or last 2 months, there was again misuse of CT of the paranasal sinuses. People went into panic. Even simple patients who had simple sinusitis or simple running of nose thought that they had mucormycosis. And they were asking whether I should get a CT of my paranasal sinuses done to rule out mucormycosis. So there was mucormycosis, which created havoc after the patients who have recovered from COVID infection. Again, a drug which was used for mucormycosis is amphotericin B. There was a marked shortage of amphotericin B in availability was greatly affected. This is a very expensive drug, needs to be given by an intravenous route and has to be given for nearly 4 or 5 weeks, and subsequently in more severe cases may have to be continued for nearly 3 months. And there was a great shortage of this life-saving medicine, amphotericin, which is the drug of choice in patients of mucormycosis. We still have images of relatives of COVID patients running from pillar to post, frantically searching for an oxygen bed or oxygen, and searching for remdesivir. Now this is this was quite common. At that point of time, I used to receive about 50 or 60 calls every day, whether a bed is available, can I admit my patients, this is my SpO2, what should I do? And it was really very frustrating. Sometimes I felt helpless that I'm not able to help many of these patients because of lack of these facilities, and the whole health system was overwhelmed by this second wave, which was totally unprecedented, expected. It was not expected that so many cases would rise so dramatically in what was seen in COVID in the second wave. Then this was patients who recover from COVID symptoms after 4 weeks. We see many patients coming to us back with a lot of problems. Many of them have severe extreme fatigue. This is called long COVID symptoms, which means patients who have recovered from COVID after 1 month, they continue to have a significant number of patients, especially those who have had more severe illness, and especially those who had comorbidities. It was found that they continue to have a lot of symptoms like extreme fatigue, myalgia, body ache, shortness of breath, persistent fever, persistent cough, loss of smell, and also many patients in fact, had loss of hair, alopecia. They could not sleep in the night, that is insomnia, brain fog, that means they could not remember things properly. And many of them had psychological problems like depression and anxiety. These patients continue to come to us in the post-COVID OPD, which we have started. Now coming to the third wave, we are still facing the second wave has actually not over. We still have, yesterday, if you see the figures, there were about 31,445 new cases in Kerala, which accounts for about 68% of India's total. Cases continue to rise now. And if you see up till now, about more than 3.25 crores of people have cases of COVID have occurred in India, of which about 4.25 lakh people have died because of COVID in India. The case fatality is about 1.34, which means majority of patients have a mild illness, majority of patients have asymptomatic, they have nothing, and the about only 1 to 1.3% of patients actually, of all the patients who die. Test positivity rate is still declining. In India at this point of time, it is 1.94. Vaccination has started and already 58 crore doses of vaccine have been delivered. But still, we are lagging behind in vaccination. 1.6 crore people of India have missed their second dose. And what is case fatality is that the number of cases who have been infected and the number of deaths which occur in them is called case fatality or death rate, which is 1.84, which simply means that majority of patients are basically asymptomatic and they do not require any hospitalization. They do not, 80% of them actually, majority of them recover by the what has been seen is that these patients, okay, I'll come to that later on. And why the cases are now surging now in Kerala, it is probably because the zero positivity, the number of cases who are affected is 44% only, as compared to rest of India where it is about 68% of people are zero positive, which means they have developed antibodies. In Kerala, the first wave, probably number of cases affected were less, and this leaves a large percentage of susceptible people who can develop infection. And therefore, I think Kerala, the cases are still surging. This I've already mentioned that. Now let us talk having given a brief introduction of the first and the second wave let us talk about the future, about the third wave. Is it looming on the Indian horizon? Will it occur? If it occurs, when will it occur? If it occurs, how severe will be the third wave? All these are questions which are of great importance, and unless we get prepared for the third wave, we are bound to make the same mistakes which we made in the second wave. Now, before we continue, it is important that to understand that after this, about a couple of months back, a national sero surveillance study was done, which means that antibodies in all the patients was tested, and it was found that in India, nearly 68% have already been exposed to COVID. And it is also important to understand that even in the pediatric age group, that children less than 18 years of age, the seroprevalence was nearly 55.7%, which means that nearly half of the pediatric population of India have already been exposed to the COVID infection. And despite this, the number of deaths which have occurred in children till date are less than 1%. It has been, therefore, it is suggested that probably the infection in children is mild, and let us hope that it continues to be in the same manner. But it is important to remember that nearly 1/3 of our population is uninfected, our majority are unvaccinated, and therefore they constitute a large number of susceptible people. And by not adopting the COVID appropriate behavior, we will create a perfect stage for third wave to emerge. We also don't know whether the antibodies which are present, whether they're protective or not. They only indicate previous exposure to the COVID virus. Now, will there be a third wave? Are we sitting on a time bomb? Actually, nobody wants the third wave, but we cannot ignore the risk. The threat of the third wave is looming large. And as per the principal scientific advisor, K. Vijay Raghavan, has said that the third wave is inevitable, even though its timing could not be predicted. And then he retracted. And 2 days later, he made a statement that the third wave could be avoided through strong measures and depends on number of factors. It emerges on the emergence of more infectious mutants, strains. Now, what is mutation? Is that the virus changes its structure to adapt itself for its own survival, and a new sort of a virus is formed which can escape the immunity which is provided by the first infection, and also by the vaccination status, which in the vaccination is affected by vaccine hesitancy that people are not willing to take the vaccine, and also by the vaccine availability, because the amount of vaccine available is and production is not matching actually with the requirement and the speed with which vaccination should be taking place. Now, if we look at other countries, we have look at UK. Now, UK has already suffered from 4 waves. Look at it; they are in fact before the COVID made its appearance before it came to India, and then already UK we can find that 4th wave is starting, where in 20th August new cases were 36,000, nearly 37,000, and a 7-day average, daily average was 31,000 nearly. So there are a lot of cases re-emerging in the UK. Similarly, there have been recent alarming trends globally and domestic as well. There have been spike of cases in Israel. And now Israel is a country where there is vaccination is about nearly 50 to 60% of the population. Even in the US, where vaccination is nearly 60%, we are seeing spike in cases and another waves there. Now this is very alarming trend. Now one thing, question which is very commonly asked is that will children be affected in the 3rd wave? It's important to understand that children were not very severely affected in the 1st and 2nd wave. But since vaccination has not started in children and they remain unvaccinated, and hence they are very vulnerable, and the schools have been closed till date. We do not know what will be the impact when the schools open. But till now it has been found that children have a milder disease, but this cannot be predicted as new variants of the virus, which are called mutant strains, emerge. And if a new mutant strain or a new variant, it may produce a next wave. How it will affect the children is something which we cannot predict now. Since majority of the infections in children were asymptomatic and mild, and they continue to spread the disease, they were called super spreaders. But at this point of time, there is no evidence to suggest that the anticipated 3rd wave would target children specifically. Similarly, pregnancy. Initially, vaccination was not started in pregnant females because there were no studies done. Now, Government of India had approved this virus for pregnancy and lactating females, and they are being vaccinated. Since data has emerged that they are safe and can be given. It has also been found that COVID is more severe in pregnancy and causes a more severe disease. And therefore, it is important that pregnant ladies get vaccinated, not only to protect themselves, but also their babies. And it is possible that there has been an inequitable distribution of vaccination in women. Women have been vaccinated less as compared to males. And it is possible that the 3rd wave may differentially impact the vulnerable population, that is children and women. This vaccine gender gap is reflective of gender inequality, which is prevalent in India and even internationally. Now, 3rd wave when? Now, there are various mathematical models have been prepared by statisticians, and they are trying to predict whether when the 3rd wave will come and how severe it will be. Now, I have tried to summarize the data. Most models predict a gentle increase and a then decline in the 3rd wave. And I believe that it is unlikely that the 3rd wave is unlikely to be as massive as the 2nd wave, simply because there aren't many people left to be infected in India, because already 68% of people have already been showing seropositivity, means they have been exposed to the virus. Now, as per the statisticians in IIT Kanpur and Dr. Vidyasagar from IIT Hyderabad, these experts who have predicted the 2nd wave absolutely correctly. Now, what they are predicting about the 3rd wave is that it is expected to peak in the month of October. And that too, if life went back to normal, that means if there were no restrictions, lockdown was removed, it is expected to peak in October. but it is possibly milder than the second wave, with maximum cases of 1 lakh per day to 1.5 lakhs per day in India. Now, this is a significant number. If you compare the first wave, the maximum cases were 1 lakh per day. So this is a very significant number, and they say that it is possibly milder than the second wave because the second wave had more than 4 lakh cases per day in India. Now, if you look at the predictions which have been made by the National Institute of Disaster Management, they have come out with a report which comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs, and they have predicted a much gloomier picture than what has been predicted by others. Now, they say that if we go back to normal, the third wave will peak in October, and it will be 3.2 lakhs per day. But this is still lower than the second wave. Now, if there is an emergence of new or more virulent strains, it might come much more earlier, and it will be much more severe. But if there are strict lockdowns and interventions being made and people following COVID appropriate behavior, we could delay this wave, and it could come in late October, and it would still be much more than the first wave, but much less than the second wave. This predictions made do not take into account the impact of vaccination into account, and therefore I believe these numbers are slightly inflated. Therefore, the third wave, when it would depend on whether the people are following COVID appropriate behavior, because in the form of hand washing, wearing a mask, and maintaining social distancing, avoiding crowded places. It also depends on the vaccination coverage, what percentage of people get and how we have able to ramp up vaccination, and depends on the lockdown relaxation. Everything is open, malls are open and everything, schools are open, everything. The third wave would come quite early. And it also depends on emergence of new and more virulent forms, variants of this virus, which are called mutant strains. And these are all statistical models, and the immunity which has been developed in a person who has already been vaccinated, how long will it last? Whether the immunity against the virulent strains or mutant strains would be there or not is still not known. It is believed that the immunity following vaccination or following infection, the antibodies start declining after 6 months. And therefore, there is a race between the virus and the vaccine, and who wins is something we need to say, and the immune system of the body. And unless more than 70% of the population is vaccinated and we adopt appropriate COVID behavior, which means that we wear masks and do social distancing and wash our hands regularly and avoid places of crowding and gatherings, we can delay, decrease, and prevent the third wave. We should also remember the vaccination status, that only 8% of Indians are fully vaccinated, and 28% of our populations have received one dose. And India needs to develop a capacity. And at this point of time, we are giving about our best figures of vaccination are that we have given about 59 lakhs of vaccinations in a single day, and that is our best figure till date. And unless and until this is ramped up to about 1 crore vaccines being given to people, 1 crore people per day, we will not be able to achieve our target before the year end. And since only 1/4 of the Indians have received 1 or 2 doses of the vaccine, we still have a long way to go. So we are still lagging so far as in the vaccination front. And until sufficiently large number of people are vaccinated or protected from infection from the disease, the pandemic is likely to come in waves. Subsequently, when large number of people, let's say 80% people have been protected or been vaccinated, then only it will become endemic. That means it will be localized in pockets in different parts of India. And therefore, there is a big bumpy road ahead where we'll have ups and downs. India is a vast country. A lot of diversity is there. One cannot make generalizations about the whole country, but we will find that certain areas, the virus is causing havoc, while the other areas it is less. And we should now accept the fact that the COVID is here to stay and we need to live with the virus. Now, what is mutants? Just a few slides about mutants and variants of the virus. All RNA viruses, respiratory viruses are known to change their structure in order to escape the immune mechanism for their own survival. And new strains and occur, which are called the which are variants of interest and variants of concern. And the original Wuhan virus, which originated from the Wuhan city of China somewhere in the month of November or December 2019, and therefore it is called COVID-19. And it spread rapidly to this world, but then subsequently it mutated. There was an alpha variant mutant which emerged in UK, a beta variant or a mutant which emerged in South Africa, a gamma variant which emerged in Brazil, and a delta variant which emerged in India. And probably the first case of pandemic, it started somewhere in Amravati. So where a lot of cases started occurring right in the month of early March. Now, Delta variant is predominant now in all countries, not only in India. Globally is responsible for the most of the cases of COVID. The peculiarity of this Delta mutant is that it spreads rapidly and it has high transmissibility. And therefore, we found that our second wave was very ferocious, very severe. And now we have, after this second wave, which was driven by this Delta mutant, now we have a problem of a new emerging strain called the Delta plus strain. This Delta virus mutant strain has also mutated into another variant, which is the Delta plus strain. So we had the Alpha variant, original Wuhan virus, the Alpha variant, the Beta variant of the Gamma variant, and the Delta mutant. And now we have Delta plus variant, which was found by the mutation of the Delta variant. Already more than 76 cases have been reported from Maharashtra, probably more than 100. And 5 deaths have been reported. 6 cases from Nagpur have been reported. And it is considered to be more easily transmissible and has a stronger binding to the lung receptors and may escape the immune response and therefore may affect people who have already been infected and also been immunized. What India is doing and government of India is doing is that they have set up a lot of genomic labs and whole genome sequencing is being done. And what is done is what is called the genomic surveillance to detect mutants. So a lot of samples are being sent to these genomic labs for whole genomic sequencing to find out whether the infection, whether a new mutant strain is emerging. And the herd immunity has been pushed to 80 to 90% by these emerging mutants. And this is again news which has appeared 3 days ago, that it has been found in 5 Vidarbha districts, also in Nagpur, this variant is there. Now, we are not sure whether this Delta plus variant, which is now emerging and slightly making its mark, will it be a driver of the third wave? There is still no evidence, but definitely it is more easily transmissible and it is considered to be more easily transmissible, but there is no data to suggest that it has not spread since it has emerged in July last more than 1.5 to 2 months back. It has not spread the way it was thought that it would spread. Now, are vaccines effective against mutants? It's very important to know that is because a breakthrough infection is when a person tests positive for COVID after 2 weeks of the second dose. Now, this breakthrough infections after vaccinations are usually very mild, and they usually do not cause death because vaccines have shown protection against more severe disease and have shown protection against death. And immunity conferred by vaccines is reduced with the Delta strain. mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer vaccine, which is available in the US, and the Moderna vaccine, which is available in the US, are actually better and perform better in so far mutant strains. Vectored vaccines like the ones which are available in India, like the Covaxin, like the Covishield. Covaxin is not a vectored vaccine. Covaxin is the whole live attenuated virus. But Covishield is a vectored vaccines, are also affected but less as compared to mRNA vaccines. Now look at the vaccination status of India as compared to rest of the world. If you look at the United Arab Emirates, this is as on 1st of August. Now this is nearly a month ago now. Nearly United Arab Emirates, nearly say more than 70% of the population is fully vaccinated. If this is followed by Chile and Israel, very high levels of fully vaccinated people. United Kingdom again more than 55%. United States about 50%. And look at India. Look at India. Look at India. It is only 8%. It is much less, and therefore we have a long way to go. It cannot. We have a long way to go, and unless we achieve somewhere here, we are not. We remain susceptible for the third wave, and we need to increase and ramp up the vaccination. As I've said, we have to give about 1 crore doses per day for the next 128 days to achieve the target. At present, I've already mentioned that we are giving, at the best scenario, 59 lakh doses per day. And hence we need to double the speed of vaccination. And as of 8 p.m. on Wednesday, a little over 60 crore doses has been administered since the beginning of the vaccination in January. Again, it is important to understand that vaccine protection wanes after 6 months. There have been talks in the West about a booster dose after 6 months, but because still large population of India is still unvaccinated, this is not approved and will not be approved. And Himachal Pradesh is probably doing the best so far as vaccination is concerned. So there are speculations that it could come in September, and then a very timely approval for the vaccination in the adolescent group, which is from 12 years to say 17 years. So timely approval of Zydus co-virus vaccine, which is approved for the to be given in the adolescents. 3 doses of 28-day gap, all above 12 years can be given. And then there have been trials about the nasal vaccine by the Oxford. And also, this is again the same Zydus co-vaccine, which was recently given emergency use authorization, becomes the world's first DNA-based vaccine, first vaccine to be approved in India for children or in adolescents, children above the age of 12 years. And trials are going on in children from 2 to 12 years also, but no vaccine is approved for children below 12 years. This vaccine has still yet to come. It will come in another 2 or 3 weeks, and probably in month of September, vaccination in adolescents would start, which is very important because one example is there. I'll just give one example, that in a city of Manaus in Brazil, there was the second wave, and then for about 76% of the population had antibodies, and there was not a single case for about 6 months, and people thought the pandemic is over. And despite having 76% of the population being positive for antibodies, the epidemic subsequently came and it raised and it caused havoc in the city of Manaus. So these are times of uncertainty. We really do not know how severe the second wave will come, how the virus will behave. And since we do not know how the virus will behave, we should ensure that we behave properly so that and take proper precautions. The preparation is therefore the key word, and for combating and preventing the third wave, strengthening pediatric care is very important, and we need to increase the oxygen beds and ICU beds. As per statement given by Dr. Vinod Paul from the Niti Aayog, says that we need to have at least 2 lakh ICU beds, and in addition to that, increase in ventilators and manpower to be prepared for the third wave. A provision of a financial provision has been made by Government of India for procuring medicines and consumables, and also there are a lot of challenges if the wave comes in children. We really do not know whether it will come in children, but if it comes in children, it will cause a havoc, because also the COVID wards have to be structured in a way that allows children's attendants and parents to stay safely with them during their recovery, because we cannot allow children alone to be admitted in the wards. And there is a huge gap between urban and rural India so far as awareness, digitalization, healthcare facilities, and also vaccination. There is a rural-urban inequity. We need to strengthen our services in the rural population, and also need to ramp up this genomic surveillance so that emergence of mutant strains are picked up, and also serial surveillance needs to be done on a regular basis to know how many people are getting infected, and also ramp up the vaccination studies, vaccination program. And therefore, my take-home message is that diligent discipline, following of COVID appropriate behavior, wearing masks properly, and not only wearing masks properly, but so that it covers the nose as the mouth continuously, not letting our guard down, especially during the in the festive season, especially now we have Ganesh Chaturthi and other things, festivals coming in the month of September, and we need to take full precautions not to put down our cards. Also, we need to ramp up the vaccination, overcome the vaccination hesitancy and vaccine shortage, because the devastation and distress we witnessed during the second wave, and a sense of personal loss which most of us experienced in the death of someone very close to us, that should strengthen our resolve to be more disciplined and take all unnecessary preventive precautionary measures. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, is a very common saying, and we have learned a lot from the second wave, and therefore it is important that we take all precautions and combat and prevent and control this pandemic. In fact, prevent the third wave at all. But one should also remember that there is going to be a series of surges till we achieve herd immunity, which is when the 80% of the population gets affected, either through infection or vaccination, and the disease then becomes endemic. Endemic means it is localized to pockets. Only then then it is possible that we have to take yearly vaccinations, as we have been doing for the influenza virus. I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much for a patient hearing. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you very much again for giving me this opportunity to speak here. I'll stop sharing my slides.
If there are any questions, you can post in the chat box.
We can take questions for 5 minutes. If there's anybody, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. Yes, Rita, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Dr. Joshi.
Good evening, good evening.
It was so nice to listen to you, very thorough and informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
you. Is that we have taken 2 vaccinations, and you say that the effect will wane in 6 months. So is there a third vaccine coming, or what do we do? Like we took it in the month of April.
I think there is no question about that. About the third dose or a booster dose is something which is not permitted by the government at this point of time, since we have a lot of whole large population who are still unvaccinated, who have still not received the first dose. And giving a booster dose is something which is not in the government's agenda. Second thing which I would like to inform that it is not that that even if the antibodies are waning off after 6 months, it does not mean that the person is not protected. If a person is vaccinated, it is possible there are various types of immunity apart from antibodies, which is called the humoral and humoral immunity. There is other types of immunity called which are mediated by the T cells and other things which cannot be measured. And it is possible that people who are vaccinated, even if their antibodies are waning off, the infection, if they develop, would be milder and would be less severe. Chances of hospitalization, chances of having a more severe disease are mitigated in patients who have received vaccination, even after 6 months.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There is a question in the chat box from Mr. Chaitanya. He asks that NMC has declared that there will be no home isolation for patients. Is that logical?
I'm not aware of this information of this, that there will be no home isolation. I don't think that is correct. Home isolation is essential part of patients who have mild disease. In patients who have mild disease, who do not have comorbidities, they are usually advised home isolation. There are very protocols laid down of what should be done in home isolation. I mean, they should be monitoring their SpO2. They should be doing what is known as the 6-minute walk test, and they should be monitoring their temperature, monitoring their symptoms, and they should be in contact with a person, with a doctor. And in addition to that, patients who have comorbidity should take medicines for it. And it is not possible, if there are a large number of cases, to admit them in what are known as health or COVID care centers. Now, patients who do not have facilities for home isolation are admitted in COVID care centers, where only mild cases who have very little symptoms are admitted, and especially there are large population, in fact, people who are living in slums and other areas who have because people who are in home isolation should have a separate room, which have a separate toilet facilities, and they should have they should eat separately. So there is a whole protocol to be followed when a person is in home isolation. Majority of people may not have this kind of facilities, and therefore they need to be admitted in a COVID care center. And if the number of cases increase, the number of COVID care centers are not so much that we would be able to accommodate all patients who are COVID, who have mild disease. So I do not think that that kind of a notification has come from NMC that home isolation should not be done. Home isolation, I think, is an essential and important part of the management of mild cases of COVID.
Thank you, sir. There's one more query. Would you please elaborate about the 6-minute walk test that you just mentioned?
Yes, like 6-minute walk test is to unmask latent hypoxia. That means patients who have mild disease are monitor their SpO2, which is the saturation of oxygen, which should be above 94%. And there is an instrument called pulse oximeter, which is put on a finger, and then we monitor the SpO2 levels, which should normally be more than 94%. And and then a person who has turned positive is asked to walk at a normal pace within the room confines of his room for about 6 minutes, and then monitor the SpO2. And if there is a drop in SpO2 below 94%, that means this person is susceptible to develop a more severe disease and needs to be hospitalized and monitored more closely Therefore, this 6-minute test is an important way to identify people who are at risk and identify people who need to be hospitalized.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. I don't see any more questions. 1 minute. That's it. Yeah. As rightly explained by you, sir, forewarned is forearmed, and following a strict discipline, maintaining precautions, at least until we are sufficiently vaccinating the population, is of utmost importance. Thank you for a very enlightening session in very simple and words, and it brought about a lot of clarity amongst all of us. For the formal vote of thanks, I request Rotarian Dr. Prathamesh to please unmute himself and present.
And we also wish that your prediction about the third wave being a milder impact to be true. So on that note, good evening, everyone. Good evening, President Jerry, past president, guests and dignitaries present in today's meeting. I'm audible, right?
Yes, you're audible.
You're audible.
So it has indeed been an informative session today, for which I would first of all like to thank Dr. Harish Varbe, who not only introduced the eminent speaker wonderfully, and also bringing this most burning topic, as rightly said by you, Dr. Verbe, this burning topic open for discussion for all of us. So I would like to thank the speaker of this evening, Dr. Prashant Joshi, on sharing his knowledge, statistics, experience, and expertise on this pandemic and about the third wave, and guiding us through the most worried question to everyone, that what if it happens? And what if it happens, then how do you take care of it? Thank you very much, Dr. Joshi, for having taken out your precious time to guide the members of Rotary Club of Nagpur on this most stressful and pressing topic for since been more than a year now. This program was initiated by Rotarian Dr. Harish Verbe and very well coordinated by Rotarian Vijay Dasija, one of the newest Rotarian officers. Thank you, sir. Thank you everyone for having Dr. Joshi here. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. May I request everyone to please rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे